It's time for the show where high culture and pop culture collide.
One of the most popular games to play, both locally and online, have been the numerous games from the Jackbox party packs. Whether you love trivia games like You Don't Know Jack or Trivia Murder Party, or art games like Drawful or TKO, they're unique, funny, idiosyncratic, varied, and easy for many people to pick up and play. But did you know that You Don't Know Jack had a game show back in the early 2000s? Well, sit back and relax as we delve deep into the You Don't Know Jack game show. Debuting in 1995, developer the Jellyvision Lab and publisher Berkeley Systems released You Don't Know Jack for the PC. It's a quiz game show where you get 10 rounds to make as much money as you can against 3 other players. However, it has a surreal twist, asking the questions in an unconventional way, with different segments with an idiosyncratic host named Nate Shapiro. On its official website, they described the game as making trivia games fun and engaging to the people at Jellystone who didn't like trivia games. The game was a massive success, becoming the 17th best PC game of that year and receiving decent reviews from critics calling it an excellent hit piece of work. From the late 90s to the early 2000s, it had 5 volumes, spin-offs covering sports and film trivia, a tabletop version, and had a console port on the original PlayStation with different hosts presenting them. But their golden age was coming to a rapid end. The PC gaming market was in a massive decline in favor of console games, and rapid advancements in technology left the You Don't Know Jack games as relics of the past, leaving the Jellyvision Lab at the brink of closing. To save the company from closing, the You Don't Know Jack team ended up focusing on other projects. As early as 1997, Jellyvision had the idea of producing a game show based on their hit series. According to an article from Montreal Times, getting the game show off the ground started off rough. Time Warner wanted it to be a syndicated game show, but Jellyvision wanted it to be a regular one. The team wanted Paul Reubens, the actor known for the man-child persona Pee Wee Herman, to be the host. I'm sure at this point there's no need for an introduction on Paul's most famous character, Pee Wee Herman. Around the 80s, he was a pop culture phenomenon with 2 films, a very successful TV series, toys, merchandise, and appearances on talk shows, TV shows, and films. You couldn't avoid him. He was everywhere. But then everything changed in 1991 when he was arrested for indecent exposure at an adult movie theater. The show was pulled off the air, toys and merchandise were no longer in the stores, some parents forbade their kids from watching anything with Pee Wee on it, others were protesting to bring the show back, and people made constant jokes and remarks on what would be known forever as the incident. Paul would keep a very low profile and retire the character of Pee Wee for 15 years. After the incident, he took on small roles on TV shows and movies that didn't feature him predominantly. When he was asked to be the You Don't Know Jack game show host in 1997, he was interested in doing the show, but then, for unknown reasons, he changed his mind, and the game show was left in production hell for several years. Knowing the context on why Paul turned down the part of being the You Don't Know Jack game show host at the time made sense. But then again, this wouldn't be the last time he would audition for a part and then change his mind for not appearing in it for unknown reasons. It wasn't until years later where his performances in the sitcom Murphy Brown, the 1999 superhero comedy film Mystery Men, and his most recent film at the time, the 2001 crime drama film Blow, was where he was marking his major comeback. Finally, Paul decided to accept hosting the You Don't Know Jack game show on one condition: to not do it as himself. Robert Morton, writer and executive producer of the You Don't Know Jack game show, stated to Paul that he should just do the show. Paul said, "I've done Reubens once in my life as a guest on The Tonight Show, but hated it." So Paul had free reign to create his own persona. The You Don't Know Jack game show was perfect since the previous hosts of the PC games were all personas with distinct traits, personalities, and quirks that made them stand out. In a way, having the game show delayed was an unfortunate but necessary blessing in disguise considering where game shows were at that point. While they debuted on radio in the 1930s, game shows became hugely popular in the 1950s with What's My Line, Concentration, Name That Tune, and the $64,000 question. But when the game show 21 rigged the whole thing by giving two contestants the answers before filming to get ratings to see who would win, the people behind the show were sued, and game shows weren't on TV for several years. Game shows came back with a full swing in the 60s, with the Newlywed Game, the Dating Game, Match Game, Let's Make a Deal, Password, and Jeopardy! Around the 70s, game shows were in a slight decline. Television channels and networks were removing game shows from their lineup, either by major time slots or altogether in favor of soap operas. Then in the 80s, game shows declined even further in viewership and airtime. In fact, television viewership declined due to women not being home as much due to working full-time jobs. Music shows and talk shows were what kept people glued into their seats. TV analysts complained that the reason why game shows were less prominent was because they reran the same old game shows over and over and over again, and new game shows ended just as quickly as they arrived. In the 90s, game shows were slowly airing again on television, but not as predominantly as sitcoms or reality shows. At that point, game shows were for a niche audience catering to specific crowds, like stay-at-home moms, mall consumers, extreme sports fanatics, intelligent trivia fans, children, and teenagers. Even the Game Show Network, a channel dedicated to airing reruns of old game shows, was having trouble attracting newer viewers to tune into their channel. If game shows were to be relevant on TV screens again, there had to be one that anyone could tune into, regardless of age, sex, or gender. There had to be one with high stakes, that people would be on the edge of their seats to see if they would win or lose. Well, we would have to go across the pond, where one game show would change everything.
Join us now for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
On September 4th, 1998, the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire premiered on ITV in the United Kingdom, hosted by Chris Tarrant. The contestant gets a chance to win £1 million by answering 15 questions in multiple choice of 4. Each question is worth a certain amount of money. The more questions you answer correctly, the more money you earn. As you earn more money, the questions get harder. But you are given 3 lifelines to help answer the question easier. Asking the audience, 50-50, which leaves one wrong answer and the correct answer, and phoning someone to ask them the question to see if they know it. The show was very popular in the UK, gaining millions of viewers with its high money prize, presentation, music, and atmosphere. 1 year later, ABC adapted the American version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, hosted by Regis Philbin, and it became a smash hit. Actually, smash hit is a vast understatement. Millions of people tuned in every evening with the same praises as the UK version, becoming number 1 in the TV Nielsen ratings, and the game show genre was revitalized. It was so popular that Disney World had a Millionaire attraction at Disney MGM Studios. In its short time, the show became an immediate pop culture staple. Just like any major hit, many networks try to get a slice of the millionaire pie by airing either Americanized adaptations of European game shows or game shows with a unique twist. CBS had Survivor in 2000, which was based on a 1997 Swedish reality game show called Expedition Robinson, and NBC had The Weakest Link in 2001, based on the 2000 British game show of the same name. They even had the original host, Anne Robinson, of the British version as the host of the American version for the first few seasons. Now it seemed that every major channel had at least one game show with their unique concepts, prizes, and gameplay to gravitate viewers and gain ratings. But none of them could capture the Millionaire success. ABC tried to strike lightning again when they decided to air the game show adaptation of You Don't Know Jack. According to the Cincinnati Enquirer, Andrew Golder, the executive producer of the You Don't Know Jack game show, hoped that it would catch on with viewers. Survivor first appeared in the summer. Millionaire premiered in the summer. It's evident people are still watching TV this time of year, and we're optimistic about Jack being picked up. Robert Morton claimed that the game show wasn't any different from the David Letterman show, which he was a writer and producer at the time. At Letterman, we were the anti-talk show. We were going against the grain and biting the hand that fed us. I liken what we did with the talk show in those days to what we were going to do with a game show. This is an anti-game show. Finally, in an interview with CNN, Paul Reubens talks about his excitement hosting You Don't Know Jack, saying, "It has a lot of comedy and variety show elements in it too. It's kind of a big mishmash of styles. I think it's very funny and original. My favorite thing on this particular show was doing something most game show hosts don't get to do. I got to laugh at the contestants if they were wrong. I don't know if the public will think it's funny, but it cracked me up every time." On June 20th, 2001, You Don't Know Jack premiered on TV. Just like in the You Don't Know Jack games, it starts with a behind-the-scenes cold open. While in the PC games, it makes it look like You Don't Know Jack is a television show with producers getting prepared for the game to begin with a mixture of quippy remarks. They all open with the host, Troy Stevens, doing or saying something snarky towards others.
Good friends at the phone company are connecting me to another free long-distance call.
I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. I'm sorry, that's... Hello?
Hi, it's Regis Philbin.
Regis? Wow, what am I, somebody's lifeline?
No, Paul, I'm just calling to welcome you to the wonderful world of game shows and to pass along a couple of pointers. The audience loves seeing other guys get rich. The more comfortable your guests are, the more likely they're going to win the big bucks.
Listen, Reed, you seem really busy. Let me let you run.
Did the new guy just hang up on me?
If you think this show is going to make anybody but me a millionaire, then you don't know Jack!
3 contestants compete to win a large sum of cash by answering idiosyncratic questions in 4 rounds. There are several categories that derive from the original game show, such as This or That, where the contestant must choose which subject fits the 2 given categories, and the Jack Attack, where they must match a name, phrase, or word that is associated with the word or phrase given. There are new categories that were exclusive to the game show. There were Things That Sound Dirty But Aren't, where the answer to the question was a word that sounded inappropriate but was something harmless. Then there's the $2 million question, where Troy would ask a question that was worth $2 million. However, each second, the amount of money got less and less. But the twist is, he wouldn't read the question all the way because a crazy event would happen, like the question would be blown away by a sneeze or was taken by a dog. Eventually, the question would be read, and the answer would be worth a lot less money. Then there's a math question where Troy would ask pop culture questions and asking the number that associates with them. By adding, dividing, subtracting, and multiplying them, they would have 30 seconds to answer the question. But of course, it's not going to be that easy.
The clock starts now!
Muchas gracias.
Don't muchas gracias me. Gracias our contestants. It's coming out of their pockets.
There were some other out there segments in between, but for the most part, that's what a typical episode of the game show was.
電球を発明したのは誰ですか?
All right, and the answers are David Schwimmer, Thomas Edison, Pamela Anderson, Chow Yun-fat. Mark.
Pamela Anderson.
Pamela Anderson is so wrong! Teen.
Chow Yun-fat.
Chow Yun-fat. Ooh, wrong again. Hillary, it's up to you.
Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison is correct for $2,000. The question was, who invented the electric light bulb?
If you look at the You Don't Know Jack game show on its surface, it seems like they somewhat captured the spirit of the games. The cold open, the snarky host, the off-the-wall questions, the 2 segments that carry from the PC games, and getting Tom Gottlieb, aka You Don't Know Jack host Cookie Masterson as the announcer.
It's the show where high culture and pop culture collide like George W. in the English language.
Even some of the segments exclusive to the game show have some essence of the PC games. The $2 million question feels like a reworked version of Gibberish Question, where you were given a mixed phrase and you have to guess what the correct one is. The more time it takes for you to figure it out, the less money that you'll earn. The runner-up prizes would be joke giveaways like yo-yos or a large supply of pineapple chunks, while the winner would walk away with the amount of cash they earned. In later You Don't Know Jack games, there would be a segment called Wrong Answer of the Game, where it would be a weird product, and if they chose the wrong answer, they would receive the product and a much larger amount of money than if they had chosen the correct answer.
At the end of this round, whoever has the lowest total will be banished to a life of tedium, regret, and this stunning array of hot sauce! Hot sauce! Makes any food hot. Whoa! Ooh, 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 that is hot!
The presentation and music are an interesting choice, giving it a 1970s vibe. The late 90s and early 2000s were very nostalgic on the 70s, with its TV shows, music, fashion, and pop culture retrospectives like VH1's I Love the 70s. Years later, the Jackbox games would take the 70s aesthetic and implement it onto one of their games, Fibbage 3. Next, I want to talk about Paul Reubens as Troy Stevens. I think he captured the snarky, cynical, and snippy personality of the You Don't Know Jack game show host pretty well. Some of his jokes and remarks have a twinge of dark comedy, lack of care of other people, and sarcasm that matches with some of the previous hosts.
Our first contestant tonight is Angie Winesek. Angie, it says here that you have 7 roommates.
Yes.
What are you,
Yes.
Snow White? What are the names in alphabetical order, Angie?
Jeanette, Deanna.
Time is up.
Oh, now the other ones are gonna feel bad.
I think you have me confused with someone who cares about that.
He sometimes performed physical comedy during segments like the $2 million question, which is a nice change of pace from the word humor. Troy has the distinction of being the only You Don't Know Jack host that you see in person, as opposed to a disembodied voice like the others, making him one of a kind.
And my staff reminds me every time they call me by that cute nickname they have for me that starts with bass and ends with tard.
As much as ABC was hoping that You Don't Know Jack would capture the Millionaire success, it did not. Not by a long shot. While Who Wants to Be a Millionaire lasted for over a decade with hundreds of episodes and receiving critical acclaim from critics and viewers, You Don't Know Jack lasted less than a month with only 6 episodes and critics giving mostly negative reviews. Joyce Millman from Salon.com said, "As a CD-ROM, Jack looks to TV as its role model, spoofing the game show form. It came with its own sleazy virtual host and stopped dead in its tracks for tedious phone-ins from special guests like Charles Nelson Riley. On TV, You Don't Know Jack is still mining the same territory. It wants a little too desperately to be a hip parody of a game show." As Troy Stevens, Reubens, strictly a gun hire here, is still supporting that suspiciously luxuriant shag hairdo. He exudes phoniness and turns to the camera to winkingly let us know that he knows that this is a really, really lame gig. Ellen Gray from the Philadelphia Daily News said, "Based on the CD-ROM game of the same name, You Don't Know Jack is supposed to be funny, but not smart and funny the way Comedy Central's Win Ben Stein's Money is." David Bianculli from the Fort Worth Star Telegram stated, "Had the producers been quicker on the uptake, Jack would have beaten Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and even win Ben Stein's Money to the punch. But timing is everything, and Reubens, as slick retro host Troy Stevens, sounds like Stein and presides over a show that's much less intelligent and irreverent than the interactive game that spawned it." I can understand the critiques they made. I would say that as an adaptation of the PC games, they were able to adapt some of the elements pretty well. However, there are a few issues that weigh it down from being a perfect video game to game show adaptation. The first glaring issue that I have is that the writing is a bit inconsistent. There are some moments that the jokes are so juvenile that only a child would find funny, and then there's some sexual innuendos that push it a bit too far.
Terry, you are a piano tuner.
Correct.
I understand you have also an interesting sideline.
That's right, I'm a ventriloquist.
Well, Stuart brought his wife. Did you bring your dummy?
I left him at home.
Left him at home. Well, let's go to your home right now and see, shall we?
Oh, hi, honey. How you doing on the show? I was just getting ready to watch with Chucklehead.
Oh, yeah, Terry. Don't bother waking us when you get home. Who's the dummy now?
We're just kidding around, Terry. That's not really your dummy.
The PC games had a great balance of juvenile and adult humor. The questions were clever and funny, and the host would give snippy remarks depending on if you answered the question right or wrong.
Say you want to player 3, do it! So it's a little harder with the fake answers there, isn't it? Yeah, I thought it would be. Maybe next time you won't buzz in so fast. Player 1, hit it! Now, assumption would mean your food is suddenly yanked up to heaven with ice cream on the side. Take a shot, player. Consommation au naturel. I did that once, but I got busted by a forest ranger.
The game show had its moments, but not as much. When a joke fails, it's not funny, and it hurts the pace a bit, which is something you should not do if you're a comedy show.
You're famous because you were impaled on a fence. Would you tell me about that?
I fell out of a window, hanging up a poster, and I got stuck upside down with 2 6-inch spikes up either side of my butt.
Wow, so you now have 3 holes in your butt.
Yes, I do.
That is what we call around here a bowling butt. I was also told that you can put your entire fist in your mouth. Would you mind demonstrating that?
Sure.
All right, thank you. I'm going to add this to my collection of people with 3 holes in their butts.
My second issue is not including more segments and props from the PC games. Sure, we have this or that and the Jack Attack, but I would have loved to have seen the others. By adding a lot more segments, it would have kept the game show feeling fresh and not formulaic and repetitive. Imagine if the game show did a version of episode 47 from the 2011 version. That would have been hilarious.
Open wide for... Oh, crap. We don't even have a title for this one? Hello? Do we have a question? Bob? Kim? Helen!
Don't look at me.
Great.
Also, I would have loved to have seen the show implement the screws. The screws would be used by the contestants if they didn't know the answer to a question and would screw their opponents, hoping that they would know the answer either. If the person they screwed gets it wrong, they lose money and the person who screwed them gets the money. The reverse would happen if the person they screwed got it right. And don't tell me they couldn't implement this in the game show. Look at Street Smarts.
You can earn an extra $200 by using the dunce cap sitting in front of you. Here's how it works. When you hear a question that you think will rattle your opponent, slap the buzzer on your chair and dunce them. If they cannot answer the question, you get $200.
My third issue is the design and presentation of the game show. While I like the 70s look in Fibbage 3 with its colors, pictures, music, and aesthetic, it doesn't look all that great in the game show. It makes the presentation very dated by today's standards. While the early PC games don't hold up compared to the modern Jackbox games, I can forgive it since they were the first games in the series. They would only get better with each installment. The music in the game show is forgettable and doesn't really have themes or cues that make it stand out. The You Don't Know Jack games had very eclectic music that fits well with the gameplay. This is a problem because game shows have some of the most memorable songs and cues in pop culture history. You can listen to a tune for 5 seconds and immediately know where it's from. Eben Schlatter does a competent job of capturing the 70s vibe into the You Don't Know Jack game show, but they should have gotten the composer from the games to do the music for the game show. Finally, a big issue that I have with the game show is that the contestants aren't the main focus. While I enjoyed Paul's performance, Troy Stevens overstays his welcome a bit, and we don't get enough time on the contestants, which is what we as an audience care about. People winning big money and prizes. That's not to say I don't love a dynamic host, because I do. That's why we remember Alex Trebek, Bob Barker, Mark Summers, and more. At the end of the day, it's the contestants playing and us cheering for them to win that keeps our butts in the seats. That's why Millionaire was such a huge hit. To an extent, that's why the Jackbox games were so much fun. The quips of Nate Shapiro, Buzz Lipman, Guy Towers, Schmitty, or Cookie Masterson were the extensions of the fun gameplay, creative questions, and people trying to win as much money as possible. By having the host overtake it, it becomes more about them, which shouldn't be the case of a game show.
The winner is Randy with $35,103.
Congratulations, Randy! Troy, I think you're forgetting something.
Overall, I do enjoy You Don't Know Jack. When the humor hits, it's funny. They brought some of the classic elements from the games and incorporated into the show really well. They added new segments that felt like it could have been from the PC games, and Paul Reubens looks like he's having a blast playing as this snarky game show host that doesn't care about anyone or anything other than himself. However, there were a few setbacks that prevented it from being a perfect video game to game show adaptation, compared to how PBS was able to take Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and made tweaks and expansions to make it a great show. It may have been a failed experiment, but it was an interesting one. If you're curious, I would say check it out. I wanted to learn more about the history of the making of the game show, but sadly there were very little documentation on it. Thanks to some deep digging, I was able to come across an anonymous source that was a crucial help. One of the first things I wanted to know about was why they decided to create a new game show host as opposed to bringing in one of the previous hosts like Nate, Guy, Buzz, Schmitty, or especially Cookie. My source states the following. Our thought process at Jellyvision was to maintain the anonymity of our hosts, who had only appeared in voiceover. We felt that was absolutely key in maintaining our vision of the brand. Cookie's face would never be seen, just like Norm's wife on Cheers or Wilson on Home Improvement. So a balance was struck to maintain some integration of the video game into the game show. That was key to the branding. You Don't Know Jack was not real, so to speak. It would not be hosted by a real person. Much of the character, as far as I know, was Paul's creation. While I would have loved to have seen Cookie as the host since he's my favorite of the You Don't Know Jack hosts, not knowing who the hosts were in the PC games was what made them mysterious yet fun. As for Troy being mostly Paul's creation, that seems to check out, since his most recent role at the time would have been Blow. So keeping the 70s aesthetic while mixing in the snarky humor seems like something he would have created. Another thing I wondered about was how involved Paul was in the game show besides being the host. Sharp-eyed viewers would see in the credits that he was one of the writers of the game show, as well as actor and companion John Paragon, who many people would know as both John B. the Genie and Terry the Pterodactyl in Pee-wee's Playhouse. My source stated, Paul sat in on writers' meetings. That part I saw. The writing team was split into two groups, the question writers and the comedy bit show writers. The latter was definitely considered the more important on the TV production side. Paul sat in on meetings with them, but not many with the question writers, which were Steve Heinrich and Tom Gottlieb, aka Cookie Masterson, one other writer, and a head writer/manager. The latter two were not associated with Jellyvision. However, my source then tells me that this was a major problem on the production side. I can tell you from my years working on You Don't Know Jack, the separation of these two groups at all was probably a mistake. We at Jellyvision kind of knew that at the time, and it's not to say that the show writer staff were not talented, they were, but there was something organic about extrapolating the content of the questions into the comedy of the show as a whole. Treating the questions and the comedy as two separate entities was probably not the best move to create the most integrated presentation. As mentioned earlier, yeah, I can tell by listening to the dialogue. It's not as consistently funny compared to the PC games. But that's not to say they didn't try. Doing an adaptation based on a video game is one thing, but doing a game show adaptation based off a video game is a completely different matter. I felt that if they integrated the Jellyvision writers with the TV writers, they would have ironed out the flaws and kept what worked, removed what didn't, and made necessary additions. Believe it or not, one of the writers of the You Don't Know Jack game show was Joel Hodgson, the creator and host of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Another thing that my source felt that could have been executed better was Troy Stevens' personality and his reactions to the contestants. In general, I think there was an attempt to maintain the very general concept of snarky, which was key to the video game series' success, but it probably went a little too far into don't care about the contestants at all territory. Honestly, it may have been too difficult of a balance to make when the host has a face and is looking right at the contestants. On the video game, the players could talk amongst themselves and laugh at the insults from the voiceover host of the game. On the TV, maybe it doesn't translate well. Maybe it's too mean and impersonal. Although the weakest link seemed to work well for a while, so who knows. Personally, I wasn't insulted with Troy's personality. It fit well with the PC game since their hosts were similarly snarky with their contestants. I'm sure the viewers knew from the get-go that this was supposed to be a parody of a game show. In fact, Paul Reubens is credited as Troy Stevens at the beginning of the show, making it look like he's performing as a snarky host, not being one in real life. He states the phoniness in every episode.
In response to all your queries, yes, this is a real game show. Yes, the contestants are real people. And yes, as much as it bothers me, we do give away real money. Let's review. Yes, yes, and yes. As a matter of fact, the only thing phony and insincere on this show is me.
Plus, it would have been difficult to have just a disembodied voice as the host of a game show. That's not to say it's never been done before. The UK game show 100% did this back in the 90s. But for something like You Don't Know Jack, I can understand the necessary evil.
I love this game. When you answer correctly, you win money. When you answer incorrectly, you look stupid.
As for why The Weakest Link worked with its cynical and snarky game show host, that was what she was known for. Anne Robinson had the nickname of Queen of Mean in the UK and was upholding their reputation. She wasn't like that in real life, but she did it because she felt that being mean, rough, and rude was going to be more fun on a trivia game show than being sympathetic. Unfortunately, here in America, the mean Brit is considered a TV trope. It's something that is expected to see in British personalities like Simon Cowell and Gordon Ramsay.
Chris, you're a bank clerk, aren't you?
I haven't got my calculator with us.
So you weren't able to work out 70% of 200?
No, really sad.
Not quickly on your fingers?
No.
Finally, I wanted to learn about why there were only 6 episodes, and if Jellyvision were pleased with the execution of the game show. The Jackbox Games wiki page stated that the reason why it was cancelled was because of low ratings, and fans of You Don't Know Jack were not aware of its existence until it was too late. My source states otherwise. Like many game shows, it was what you call a summer replacement. ABC ordered 6 shows, and like anything, it had been wildly popular, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was at the time, they may have ordered more episodes, but it was pretty clear by at least halfway through production that no one really thought this was going to get picked up. Jellyvision's input was limited, and as the production went on, we were increasingly concerned about how it was going. I do recall a somewhat contentious intervention from our liaison about the midway point in production, but not much really changed after that, except that it created more tension in the studios between the TV side and the Jellyvision writers there. And I think that was a point where everyone kind of realized subconsciously that this was going to be a 6-episode thing and no more. As for whether Jellyvision was happy with how the game show turned out, my source states, honestly, I just think the magic of You Don't Know Jack is something that maybe can't be translated from game show to live TV, or live on stage, or any kind of live. It's in the anonymity of the host, the crazy things that can occur only in that non-real space. Cookie getting attacked by cats during a question is somehow totally organic in the game, where it's happening in audio only, and things like that can seem forced for a lack of better word on TV, and importantly in the game, the focus is still always highly on the players. Yes, the host is crazy, but all the action is focused on the players. On the TV show, the focus is absolutely not on the players at all. They were an afterthought. The focus was on the bits and on Troy Stevens, and, in my opinion, is why the magic didn't translate well. It's got its little moments though. I don't want to make it sound like a complete train wreck. It's got a little cult fan quality to it still, because it is still different from anything that's been on TV. I agree. There is a cult fan quality to it that makes it unique for people who don't want to watch a cookie cutter game show. It fits within that time period of 2001 before 9/11 changed America forever, and people are looking back on it with nostalgia, even if they didn't watch it when it first premiered. In an era where game shows were a lot more experimental, it's something that probably couldn't be done today. This wouldn't be the last time Jellyvision would feature their products on television. A few months later, on October 2001, AMC would feature a version of You Don't Know Jack hosted by Schmitty during their Monster Fest horror movie marathon, hosted by actress Carmen Electra and writer/director Clive Barker. Viewers would go to the AMC website and play an exclusive mini episode every day until Halloween. Unfortunately, the game is no longer available on the AMC website and hasn't been re-released by Jellyvision Lab. There's no archive online either, so this is considered lost media. On December 3rd, 2001, Jellyvision Lab did their second attempt of doing a game show in the form of Smush, airing on the USA Network. The idea of Smush came from a collaboration with Michael Davies, the producer of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, his production company, Diplomatic Productions, and Jellyvision. Davies had worked with Jellyvision on the PC version on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in the early 2000s, and ignited the Smush deal. Hosted by Ken Ober, Smush has 4 contestants, getting 2 different answers and smushing them together to create a portmanteau.
Greek mythological creature that is half man and half horse, plus sacred Jewish scripture forming the first 5 books of the Old Testament. David.
The Centaura.
Centaura is right. Very good. Centaur plus Torah.
Being neither Greek nor Jewish.
In each round, one player gets eliminated and would have more answers that they would have to smush into a portmanteau. When one is left, they would have a chance to win $8,000 in cash if they were able to receive 5 smushes in 45 seconds. If they didn't get all 5, then they would receive $1,000 per smush. My source told me that the production of Smush was better due to more of the Jellyvision writers being involved than the You Don't Know Jack game show. The Smush TV show was much more in line with Jellyvision's vision for that show, played at a party informal setting, and in general it was a better experience overall than the You Don't Know Jack game show, though not without its contentions, obviously. Smush was a lot more successful from critics and viewers compared to You Don't Know Jack, due to its mixture of pop culture and broader knowledge and casual atmosphere. However, it wasn't without its critiques, such as the low budget set and the low payment of $8,000 is the grand prize. I mean, after all, Millionaire was the standard at that time, so $8,000 is nothing compared to $1 million. As for my thoughts on Smush, I think that this quote from Vulture said it best. It's a fun enough game when it's part of a bigger show, but maybe not enough to sustain a whole show. I agree. While the questions and writing feel more on par with Jellyvision, it's pretty one note. Once you get the premise, there's not a lot of variety afterwards. At least with You Don't Know Jack, there were different segments that kept it from being monotonous. As for Ken Ober as the host, he was pretty good, but he was nowhere near as entertaining as Paul Reubens was. The atmosphere and presentation do feel akin to the Jellyvision games, taking place in a pub-like area surrounded with dozens of people where the host and contestants would sit at a table filled with snacks. The Jellyvision games are party games after all, so the setting makes sense. While it looks less dated than the You Don't Know Jack game show, it feels a bit hollow and fake. The audience isn't interactive, and the food on the table is clearly fake. The UK game show Richard Osman's House of Games took the portmanteau segment and implemented it into the final round of the game called Action Smash, and it works because, like You Don't Know Jack, they had a lot of segments to keep it from getting stale. That's what it should have been, part of a segment on a game show, not the entire thing. Smush lasted on the air a lot longer than You Don't Know Jack. But for only 6 months, this will be the last time Jellyvision Lab would do a game show or anything on television. It wouldn't be until several years later that You Don't Know Jack would make a huge splash in the game market again. In 2008, Jellyvision Games was relaunched as a subsidiary for Jellyvision Lab, and in 2011, they spun into their own company. For the first time in over a decade, they released a new version of You Don't Know Jack for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, iOS, Steam, and the Ouya. Cookie Masterson returned as the host. They streamlined the questions with only 10 questions as opposed to answering 7 or 21. They brought back classic segments while adding new ones, and local and online multiplayer. Critics and gamers loved it and gave it unanimous praise for being not only a callback to the previous games while adding a fresh coat of paint, but being a great standalone multiplayer quiz game. Due to the massive hit of the 2011 version, Jellyvision was rebranded as Jackbox Games and released their first Jackbox Party Pack in 2015 with a new version of You Don't Know Jack and 4 brand new games: Drawful, Word Spud, Lie Swatter, and Fibbage. Today, they have since released 8 other Jackbox Party Pack games, with their 10th one coming out next month. The classic You Don't Know Jack games are available on Steam if you're interested in seeing how the series began. The games became even more popular for game nights, both on person and especially online, where streamers would play on YouTube or Twitch. The games have referenced the game show, but only on quick gestures.
You know, if we could get Paul Reubens to host this game, it would be a guaranteed hit.
Game shows continued to branch out and become more experimental. After Millionaire waned in popularity around the late 2000s, a new slew of game shows based on another country became popular. Japanese game shows. Channels such as Spike TV and G4 would air game shows such as I Survived a Japanese Game Show, Wipeout, Ninja Warrior, and Takeshi's Challenge. The Game Show Network started picking up in popularity with airing exclusive game shows such as Friend or Foe, Russian Roulette, the first incarnation of the British game show The Chase, Skin Wars, which would eventually air on Sci-Fi, and revived versions of Catch-21, Press Your Luck, and Lingo. Other game shows such as Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, 1 vs. 100, Deal or No Deal, and more had gotten people talking about game shows again. Nowadays, game shows are more popular than ever, partially due to the pandemic. When people were stuck at home, they would tune into shows and movies that would entertain and comfort them while the world was in crisis. Game shows was one of them, especially older game shows that came out decades before. People started watching the 90s version of Supermarket Sweep for both nostalgia and for other reasons. But nevertheless, game shows aren't going away anytime soon. If you want to know more on why game shows are still beloved, check out the documentary miniseries, The Game Show Show. 1 year after the You Don't Know Jack game show was cancelled, Paul Reubens' career took another major hit when he was arrested for possessing materials that were deemed inappropriate, including photos and videos of child erotica. While he pleaded no contest for possessing child pornography, he was pleaded guilty for obscenity. In addition of taking care of his father dying of cancer, Paul kept a low profile once again. Meanwhile, Pee-wee's Playhouse aired for the first time in over a decade on Adult Swim, the show was released on DVD, and a new generation of kids and teens entered into the world of Pee-wee Herman. Paul brought the character out of retirement, appearing in the 2007 Spike TV Guys' Choice Awards. He launched his full comeback as the character in 2009, when he announced on doing a revamped version of the Pee-wee Herman Show at the Club Nokia Theater in Los Angeles, Broadway in New York City, and Pee-wee would have his third movie, Pee-wee's Big Holiday, on Netflix in 2016. The last time he would perform as Pee-wee Herman was being a radio DJ at KCRW on November 26, 2021.
I'm going to play you some of my real favorite songs from some of my real favorite artists. It's all very, very real. And to kick things off, here's a track from the godfather of soul himself, Mr. James Brown. Besides being a one-of-a-kind, amazing, unbelievable singer, Brown was a revolutionary dancer. When he would get too tired on stage, an assistant would drape a magical cape over him and restore his power of dance.
There were other projects he wanted to do as Pee Wee Herman, such as Pee-wee's Playhouse the movie and the Pee Wee Herman story, his own take on Valley of the Dolls, where Pee-wee is a famous country singer but becomes addicted to drugs and ends up in jail. But that would never happen, as he had passed away on July 30th, 2023, after a 6-year battle with cancer. For the past month, I've been seeing many people paying their tributes to Paul Reubens, from the fans of the movies and shows he's been in, to actors, actresses, artists, authors, movie directors, comedians, and talk show hosts. Even the Jackbox game's social media pages had paid tribute to Paul as Troy Stevens. There had been many posts by online content creators sharing their fond memories of his work, mostly his Pee Wee Herman content. Yes, it's true that Paul will forever be known as Pee-wee, but he was much more than that. He was incredibly diverse in both drama and comedy, that almost every scene he was in, he was a memorable highlight. But in real life, he was a quiet, shy, and humble guy who simply wanted to make people happy. I know this because I met him once at a convention. I felt that presence when I saw him talking to kids and adults while waiting in line to thank him for his work. And he even autographed the tweet he posted sharing my blog about Pee-wee's best moments of 2011. I still have that tweet, and that will forever be treasured in my collection. I'm going to miss Paul, but as long as we remember him, he will never be forgotten.